Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name's Elijah. Today we are here with the first of hopefully many postseason episodes of 2024. We're feeling pretty good coming into it. The O's have won 5 of their last 6, took 2 or 3 from the Yankees in New York, then swept the Twins in Minnesota. We finished up the season 91 and 71. Overall, that's a pretty great result. Anytime you get 90 wins, we all know it was not the smoothest road to get there, but we are truly finishing on a bit of a high note here. Finished up 3 games behind the Yankees for the division lead, 5 games up on the other 2 wildcard spots. Those went to Kansas City and Detroit, of course. Today, we're going to chat through the upcoming series that we have with the Kansas City Royals. It is a 2014 ALCS rematch for those of you who were with us 10 years ago or so. I have not so fond memories of Jeremy Guthrie in a These O's Ain't Royal shirt. But yeah, we're going to look at how each of these teams stack up, starting with these starting pitching matchups. As much as we know about them, at least, we'll get to that, but lineups and then the bullpens, of course. Before we get to all that, do want to thank the sponsor of this show. As always, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on the $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game is over, get on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. So, the Kansas City Royals. The Kansas City Royals have exactly 2 strengths. There are 2 things they do well. The first and the foremost, Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. is very good at baseball. He was the best shortstop in the major leagues this year. All credit to Francisco Lindor. All credit to Gunnar Henderson. I am not disrespecting them when I say this man had an amazing season. The second strength, and the one that's probably worth a little bit more discussion, is a legitimately strong starting rotation, particularly in the playoff setup. We are going to start right there. In game 1, the Royals are going to be sending Cole Ragans to the bump. This dude is legit. Arguably, maybe the best trade of the deadline last year. The Royals flipped Aroldis Chapman to the Rangers for Cole Ragans, and they actually got a DSL outfielder that I did not remember. But, another piece is always nice. The Rangers obviously got their World Series. They saw us. We saw Chapman. They can't be too upset about it. But Ragans is very quickly developing into one of the best pitchers in the game. He trailed only Chris Sale, Tarek Skubal, and Zach Wheeler in terms of F-WAR this year. By B-WAR or R-WAR, if you prefer that letter for some reason. They both mean baseball reference WAR. He has been the 9th most valuable pitcher this year. Looking at why F-WAR likes him more, it'll tell you what he does well. F-WAR is FIP-based rather than runs against in B-WAR. FIP is based on 3 things: your strikeouts, your walks, and your home runs. Cole Ragans struck out 29.3% of hitters he faced. That is 6th in MLB for qualified starting pitchers. He gave up only 15 home runs, good for 0.72 home runs per 9 innings. That is 9th in MLB of qualified starters. And he walked hitters at just slightly above league average rates. Still, the K- walk percentage was 11th in MLB. He did all of that over 186 innings, 186 and a third, I should say. That is 12th most in MLB this year. He did, he maintained this exceedingly high level of performance. He did it over a large bulk of innings. That will accrue value. That will get you WAR. Cole Ragans will attack you with 5 pitches. He uses all 5 more than 10% of the time. The primary and dominant ones are the 4-seam, the changeup, and a knuckle curve. The 4-seam has slightly above average hop, but really a ton of arm side run. Changeup is a more hoppy one as well. Us O's fans, the comparison I make for these hoppy changeups from the left side that play well off of a 4-seam fastball is John Means. Obviously, it's still not quite as vertical as his, but it helps to internalize it a little bit. And then his knuckle curve is this really big two-plane breaker. He does also throw a cutter and a slider. They act as bridge pitches. They aren't as effective by themselves, but if he didn't have them, nobody would ever swing at the curveball. Just gives him a wider range of weapons too. A quick funny note on Reagan's: he trains at Tread Athletics. They helped him redesign his motion. He added 5 miles an hour or so. It's really like what turned him into the beast that he is. Another Cole that you may be familiar with, Cole Irvin, he trains at the same place. If only he were throwing 96 consistently too, uh, we might not have let him go. But speaking of a wider range of weapons, as I mentioned earlier, the second arm that the Royals are going to throw is Seth Lugo. Seth Lugo is credited on Baseball Savant for having 9 pitches by all accounts, including his own. That is not correct. He has more. I think one interview I saw with him, I believe he said he has 12 distinct pitches. Baseball Savant cannot figure that out. I don't blame StatCast for lumping some of these things together. There are, I guess what it goes to say, there are very few people in baseball with as much feel for spinning the ball as he has. I think that, the Orioles are probably blessed to have two who can kind of compete with him in Corbin Burnes and Kyle Bradish, able to create distinct shapes on a number of different breaking balls. But, Seth Lugo, I think his goal is to have one breaking ball that gradually moves, from a little tiny cutter all the way out to his big two-plane, like I can't even think of a descriptor for it. His massive, massive curveball. The thing averages almost 3,300 RPM, but he wants an individual breaking ball to move every discrete inch, on the way out to that thing. So, they don't really capture the full range of pitch profiles the way that Lugo does, I guess, is the difference. Yeah, I won't go through his full arsenal because it would take an hour. But the thing to note, before we get to the rest of what we have to do today, probably his primary weapons are his four-seam, sinker, and like I said, almost one of the best curveballs in baseball. The thing does average almost 3,300 RPM. It's absolutely insane. I've seen videos of him up over 3,500 RPM, which is just not a figure that we really see very often. So he does that. He throws, like I said, every type of breaking ball you've ever heard of. And then he also has a changeup and a splitter. Lugo, I guess to step back a little bit, he was a reliever for years and a spot starter on the Mets. He got a shot in the Padres rotation last year and he really ran with it. This year, he was second in MLB with 206.2 innings pitched. He really doesn't miss bats the way that Reagan's does. In fact, he struck out less than league average this year, about 1% less. But he does walk next to nobody. He also does not give up many home runs. As such, that FIP-based Fangraphs WAR still loves him. But he limited damage extremely well, so B-WAR loved him even more, actually. He was the 6th best pitcher in MLB by F-WAR. I'm sorry, I wrote that down wrong. He was 9th best in MLB by F-WAR. He was sixth best by B-WAR. ERA was down at an even 3, WHIP at 1.09. Together, these two guys really are, one of the best 1-2 punches in all of baseball, particularly this year. They did it with a high level of performance. They did it in bulk as well. Really, truly phenomenal, and we should be scared to face them. Yeah, and like I said, one thing I didn't note here is that Lugo actually limits home runs just as well as Cole Reagan's does. We have had, I believe Tyler has talked about, and we have talked about on this podcast, the Orioles have been semi-reliant on the long ball. Will be interesting to see how much they really, how much they can work around that, how much they can string together a couple hits. We saw that in a couple of the recent games against the Twins and everything, against the Yankees as well. So fingers crossed that won't hinder us too much, but we'll see. The Game 3 starter for them, It's going to be Michael Wacha. He was also with the Padres last year, coincidentally. Um, but Wacha had a good year. He's a command guy. He doesn't like have this jump off the page stuff, but he has a really solid changeup. Plays well. He's deceptive. He doesn't walk many people. He because of that deception, like he gets good extension, tunnels well. Just because of that, he doesn't get hit hard at all. But if he has a weakness, it's that he struggles to put people away, struggles to get whiffs, struggles to get chases. Um, so he will not go out there and strike out 12 dudes, but there's a solid chance that he will limit damage against him. So that said, I would say he's a very solid third playoff starter. Royals are certainly not upset with it. As to the O's, the Orioles are going to throw Corbin Burnes in game 1, and that is all we've got. I'm recording this on Monday night. The Orioles refuse to show their hand. We will chat a little bit more about that in a second. But to start with Burnes, obviously he's incredible. We have to come correct against either Lugo or Reagans, honestly, but we got to come correct, and we are doing so with Corbin Burnes. He brought his sweeper back in this past month. The thing, I have talked about it on Twitter a little bit, the thing is demonic. And he's emphasized his cutter shape a little bit more. He had said he was almost spinning the ball a little bit too efficiently, maybe getting a little bit too behind it. He's trying to spin it a little bit more. Results on it have been great in September overall, not just about the cutter, but overall. Opponents have hit only 194 against him. He's struck out almost 28% of hitters faced. That's up from 18.5% in August. Burnes and Reagans truly, will be one of the best pitching matchups of the whole postseason. We should be excited to see it. So, as to what the Orioles are doing for the rest of the series, they steadfastly refuse to tell anyone. This is, most likely gamesmanship on the part of the O's front office. I think that, there's a certain element, of analytics departments on these other teams are putting scouting reports together, putting recommendations for what pitch a given hitter should attack, the hitting coaches are putting plans together for each hitter. They're getting in against these new trajectory machines that can basically mimic the pitches of a given starter. They're getting in against them, watching their whole repertoire over and over and over, and seeing these pitches in real time. If you hide your hand a little bit, you prevent them from getting as much of a jump on it because they might have to prepare for a couple different contingencies. That's the main idea here. The obvious course of action for the Orioles is just to go ahead and start Zach Eflin anyway. He has been their second best pitcher. He's been great. Obviously, we acquired him. We're very happy to have him. Thank goodness he's going to be here next year too. But in the effort of playing the game with the Orioles, what else could they be looking at here? Jacob Calvin-Meyer of the Baltimore Sun asked if the outcome of game 1 could determine what happens for game 2. Brandon Hyde said, quote, "It could." So obviously that's not a super telling thing, but I think it does speak to the fact that they could be keeping options open to an extent. If we roll through game 1, that might change the calculus. The reason I say that is because game 1 of the American League Division Series will be on Saturday, this coming Saturday, which means that Corbin Burnes would need to be on short rest if he wanted to throw it. As such, he probably will not start that game. Whoever does start that game, however, likely could pitch game 4 on the following Thursday. Corbin Burnes, assuming that he throws game 2 on Monday, could be ready for game 5 on that following Saturday. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, you've got whoever pitches game 1 doing game 1 and game 4, and Corbin Burnes doing game 2 and game 5. And it would make sense that the Orioles would say, if there is a way that we can get Zach Eflin to throw game 1, that's the best setup for this team. That's the ideal. So it makes sense to, hold out some hope and maybe try to get creative with it. If we can get Zach Eflin to not throw in game 2, if we're comfortable enough, if we can find something that will work and will get us there to save him for that game 1 of the ALDS, and you have confidence in it, it's an idea. The thing that I will say is that you also have the ability, if you do not, if you win game one, if you want to get creative for game two, then you would still have Eflin for game three. That is a gamble, of course, and it would limit what he's able to do in the next series. But it's a gamble that could pay off. Um, I don't have to make the decision. I would probably just say throw Zach Eflin game two. Um, but yeah, I mean, let's like look at it a little closer. I think the first thing, it opens up the door for a potential Dean Kramer outing. Dean has kind of had some big game energy in the past. We saw him shut out Houston in 2022 against the AL East in September this year. He allowed two earned runs in three starts. Averaged looks like 6 innings pitch on average. One of them was that start against the Yankees in the last series, led us to a win. Dean Kramer could absolutely show up in game two uh, in hopes that we can push Zach Eflin to game one of the ALDS, sneak away with a win. But as I was looking through all of this, I figured let's get weird. If the Orioles want to get really weird, one interesting note about the Royals is that as a team, they are 16% worse than league average against left-handed pitching. By contrast, they're about league average against righties with a 99 WRC plus, but 84 WRC plus against lefties, 16% worse than league average. Cade Povich, as it happens, and I'm not necessarily proposing this, but if the Orioles want to get weird and want to play around and try to sneak away with something, there might be an outside way to do this. Cade Povich, as it happens, would be on day 5 on Tuesday. He last pitched on the 27th. So between Povich, Aiken, Coulomb, Perez, the Orioles really have some legitimate southpaw weapons, and there is a way that you could piece together a game. I don't think that the Orioles would say, Cade Povich, go out there and give us 7 innings. That's probably not how they would handle this situation. But there's a situation where we could use guys like that. Povich goes 4 innings, Aiken goes 2, something like that. And you start bridging the gap, and you can kind of neutralize a lot of this lineup. Povich maybe even as a bulk guy behind Keegan Aiken. At like a Keegan Aiken as an opener, some sort of creative something like that. One thing that I did notice, and I did check it because why wouldn't I? But yes, Bobby Witt Jr. is significantly worse against left-handed pitching as well. 132 WRC plus against lefties, and that's up against 177 against righties. So, I think there is a way that you could do something like throw Keegan Aiken out there, let him get through the top of the lineup. Maybe like I don't even know who they're hitting nowadays with Vinny Pasquantino out, but maybe like MJ Melendez, Michael Massey, some of these guys are lefties you could help neutralize with a Keegan Aiken. Obviously, Salvador Perez does hit lefties pretty well, but I think you take knocking Bobby Witt down a little bit for that. And then the other thing to say about Povich, he really has stepped up in September a bit. In 4 of his 5 starts, he allowed 2 earned runs or less. That was including 2 starts against the Red Hot Detroit. By Pitching Bot, Pitch Model or on Fangraphs, his best 3 starts of the year were in this last month. By Pitching Plus, which is from the same family as Stuff Plus, by Pitching Plus, 3 of his 4 best starts were in September. He definitely finished the year on a high note, and I think that some creative bulk way to deploy him, or giving him a short start just 1.5 times through the order could make a lot of sense. But taking a step back, how does the normal route set us up for the ALDS? If the Orioles do go the Burns Eflin route and we win in 2 games, that would likely set up either Dean Kramer or Albert Suarez to start game 1 and game 4. Corbin Burns would start game 2 and game 5, and Zach Eflin would start game 3. Albert Suarez is probably out for this series, just on the basis of him having pitched the last day of the season. But yeah, once again, Dean Kramer or Albert Suarez for game 1 and game 4, Burns to start game 2 and game 5, and Eflin to start game 3. If Dean Kramer is needed for game 3 of the wild card series, I would think that Albert Suarez would start game 1 of the ALDS probably. You would still roll with Burns game 2 and game 5, Eflin game 3, and then you could make a decision on a matchup for game 4. Like I just said, Dean had a good outing against the Yankees. Suarez, has pitched well all year. He's been a godsend for us. So you could go either way. Probably a matchup thing. Maybe even give each of them 3 innings or something like that, and use it to save up the bullpen for a game 5. Taking a look at the lineups briefly. I made that 3 syllables. Did you guys hear that? Taking a look at lineups briefly. Say briefly. So there's a matchup here of 2 of the best young players in baseball. Mentioned their guy first, but have to shout out Gunnar Henderson, of course. Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr. I'm recording this late at night. You got to bear with me. My tongue is failing. Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr. This is like really the epitome of a postseason storyline. The articles write themselves. 2 of the best young shortstops in the game. They're playing the same position. They're about the same age, head to head. Who's going to lead their team to victory? It's awesome. This is what you want to see in the postseason. Bobby Witt Jr. truly is one of the best players in baseball. If Aaron Judge was not having, I think it's like the 5th best season by WRC plus ever, he's like a Barry Bonds level season. He's worth like 2+ players right now. If he was not doing that, Bobby Witt Jr. would have an easy MVP award here. He put up 10.4 FWAR. He's hitting 68%, 68% better than league average by WRC plus. He hit 32 home runs, playing half of his games in a pitcher-friendly park. He strikes out well below league average. He walks right about league average rates. He stole 31 bags and has 100th percentile sprint speed. You heard me right, 100th percentile. He has 98th percentile range at shortstop, and his arm is in the top quarter of shortstop arms in the game. He truly just does it all. StatCast and Baseball Savant carry this run value metric, which does accrue over the course of the year, but for batting, he's in the 99th percentile of run value. For base running, he's in the 99th percentile, and for fielding, he was either in the 95th or 96th percentile. He's just an elite player in every facet of the game. And you got to shout him out, and you got to be terrified of him. This is what the playoffs are about. It's these big players step up in big moments. This is his first taste of the postseason. With a young player, it can go either way, of course. The pressure could get to him, all this stuff, if you buy into that. But after Bobby Witt, the Royals lineup is not that good. It's just not that good. The Royals lineup really pales in comparison, particularly in comparison to the O's. The way that I looked at it was I just looked at, okay, who has more than 300 plate appearances? Who are the regular players? Each team has 9 players with more than 300 plate appearances. That was nice and convenient for this comparison. Every one of the Orioles is better than league average as a hitter by WRC+. I mentioned the Royals were 84 WRC plus against lefties, 99 against righties. Orioles are 115 and 115. We mash both sides. We are better than league average against both. And yeah, every one of the Orioles regulars, quote unquote, is better than league average as a hitter by WRC plus. By comparison, only 4 of the 9 Royals are better than league average. Only 3 Royals are better than the O's least productive hitter on that list, which is Adley Rutschman. And only 2 of those Royals, 2 of those 3 that are better than Adley, are actually fully healthy. Vinny Pasquantino is, on the mend. He may come back in this series, but if he doesn't, it's just like Bobby Witt and Salvador Perez. And those are the only 2 people hitting better than the Orioles' worst hitter. Just looking at WAR, overall value accrued, to loop in some defense here, 6 of the 9 Orioles are above 2 FWAR. Only 2 Royals are above 2 FWAR, those same names, Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez. Just plain and simple, the Orioles lineup is demonstrably better. Hopefully that will win them this series. Taking a look at the bullpens, I think the biggest thing to say here, the long story short, is that neither one is perfect. I think that the Probably the back end of the Royals pen feels better with Lucas Erceg. Sir Anthony Dominguez has been struggling with the long ball recently. He's still got the strikeout stuff, but definitely too many fastballs in the middle of the plate. A little bit of a closer look at Erceg. He's got this mostly arm side arsenal with this nasty gyro slider. Slider drops a couple inches, has no horizontal. Excuse me. He throws at 86 miles an hour. These types of sliders are like really, really coveted. It's actually very similar to Kumar Rockers in many ways. Stuff Plus has it as 18% better than league average. Hitters are batting 123 off of it and are slugging only 140. Slugging below the Mendoza line. This pitch is nasty. And particularly, it plays up because the rest of his arsenal all rides to the arm side more so than average. Four seam, changeup, and sinker round out the arsenal, all better than average arm side run. And he throws extremely hard. He averages 98.6 and 98.5 on the two fastballs. The changeup is at like 91 or something. This is a pretty dominant arm. As a righty in particular, you have these things boring in on you. The 98.6, 98.5 sinker, four seam, and changeup even. Boring in on you, and then the slider just stays perfectly straight and dives. It's a dominant mix. Lucas Erceg is really, really good. Hopefully, get a lead before you get to him in the pen. That is the way to beat the Royals. So, getting there, that part, the Orioles, I think we might actually have a slight edge there, particularly with the return of Danny Coulomb, Jacob Webb, etc. The Royals will feature a number of lefties. I think they will deploy them pretty heavily against us, particularly because, Colton Cowser, Gunnar Henderson, those are the two you can somewhat neutralize there. In that effort, they will lean on the likes of Chris Bubich. I did not quite I thought he was fine. I thought he was good, converted starter, stuff's playing up in the pen, it's fine. He's been phenomenal this year. His Baseball Savant page was like horrifyingly read while I was researching for this. Really spectacular this year. A couple quick notes. He's striking out 32% of batters faced. He is walking only 4.1%. That's like half of league average. And if you look at rates for relievers, it's probably better than half of league average. He features a hoppy four seam, a sweepy slider, and a fine changeup. Bubich will be supported by Angel Zerpa and Daniel Lynch from the left side also. Sinker slider from Zerpa, four seam slider change from Lynch. Neither one really has stuff that jumps off the page. They've just been, solidly effective. And from the right side, the big guy besides Erceg, of course, is John Schreiber. He's your standard low slot guy. Kind of fun seeing the new arm angle data on Baseball Savant. It matches the eye test though. He throws from straight out to the side. But he's your standard low slot guy. His arm angle is at 10 degrees. I should have finished that thought. But sweeper and sinker are the two most used pitches, like usual for these guys. He pretty evenly uses those with a four seam though, and then he will mix in a cutter, acts as that bridge to the sweeper. He doesn't really miss bats, and he isn't like a command artist. He walks a lot, not a lot, but he walks some guys. The big thing with him is he's just very difficult to square up. We know the likes of Chad Bradford, and we've seen some of these sinker guys in the Orioles days. He's just funky. Ground ball barrel rates both 90 percentile and better. Hard hit rate also better than league average. He's just a tough guy to hit. That just is what it is. So all in all, I think that the Orioles do match up nicely here. I think that we have a distinct advantage with our lineup. I think that, the starting pitching on the Royals side is better, but I think that Corbin Burns will match up with Cole Reagans just fine, particularly with how he looked in September. And then I think if you roll out Zach Eflin, he's going to have a good game. Seth Lugo, probably has the edge there as a complete package, but Zach Eflin will keep you in a game. You could potentially get to the bullpen, or Seth Lugo makes one bad pitch, and that is what it is. So anything can happen largely, but feeling good about the Orioles' chances here. I think that Yeah. The bullpen is it's something to think about. We definitely are lacking that last inning option right now. But I expect us to piece it together a little bit. I don't think it'll be as simple as Sir Anthony Dominguez just gets the ninth every time. We'll see what happens. I expect us to play matchups a little bit. And overall, I do think we're going to win this series. I'm not. What I will say emphatically is, if you guys walk away from this and you say Eli was on the Warehouse Pod and he was saying that the Orioles are going to start Cade Povich on Game 2, I will push back on that. I'm not saying it. I just threw it out there as a crazy thing that would be really, really bold from the Orioles standpoint. I can't really see him doing it, but it's a fun thing to think about. And I do think that there's a very good chance that Povich does get maybe a chunk of, like a 2-3 relief or 2-3 inning relief stint. I don't think that there's any reason to leave him off of the roster entirely. We'll see how it goes, but I am excited to see what we do with Game 2. If I had to put my money on the line, I think it's totally gamesmanship. I think the Orioles are playing around, and I think that Zach Eflin pitches Game 2. They just want the Royals to have to study Zach Eflin and Dean Kramer, for example, do something like that. So we'll see what happens. If the Orioles are bolder than me, let's go Cade Povich. If they're not, let's go Zach Eflin. We'll just leave it at that. This has been the Warehouse Podcast. Obviously, I give the spiel at the end of every episode. You guys know what's coming, but if you could follow us, subscribe to us, come check us out on your preferred podcast platform or on YouTube if you want to come see our faces and see the hilarious little stupid thumbnails that we put together for these things. We have some fun doing it. So, we're over there. Any ratings you can give us, comments on the videos, likes, hearts, all the above. We do appreciate it. You can also get in touch with us. Email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Reach out to us on Twitter. We're at thewarehousepod. We are everywhere you need to find us. Come give us a shout. Love to talk Orioles baseball. Excited for this postseason. I have recorded this so late that it is now day 1 of the wild card series. So, and I know I'm going to release it on this day. You're going to be hearing it on this day. So let's go O's. Let's make a statement. Let's make a statement. This was a rough season. We can erase it all if we come. The Rangers finished last year 50-51. Unless my brain is totally lying to me right now. But the Rangers finished last year 50-51. I'm pretty confident in this. And it is very, very important to note that when they came into our house and rolled right through us, nobody was thinking about that. When they rolled right through the wild card round, nobody was thinking about that. If we take it to the Royals here, if we establish that Gunnar Henderson truly is the better shortstop out of him and Bobby Witt, we're going to be feeling really good. We're going to be heading into New York, where we just took 2 of 3 from the Yankees. This team could catch fire. It could happen. Weirder things have happened. Let's cheer hard. I'm going to be on the couch for this one. Actually, I lied. I'm going to be at work, but best believe this little phone right here, I'm holding it up for the folks on YouTube. This little phone right here is going to be sitting on that desk. It's going to have MLB TV up. We're going to be chilling. That'll be great. I'll talk to you guys next time. We will be doing daily recaps. So tomorrow morning, expect a new video, expect a new podcast. We'll chat with you soon. Let's go. Oh.